Hello and welcome to BrownsMemes Rants, the show that, well, I think I pretty much covered it in the title. I rant. And I want to talk about sports. And seeing some of the folks that talk about sports these days, well, I'm not flexible enough to get my head that far up my ass, so how much worse could this show really be? And since I run a stupid Twitter account, I intend on also asking and possibly answering all the stupid questions you might have about sports. And the first show I'd like to do would be to address the pro football disciplinary system, because it doesn't get much fucking stupider than that. I mean, let's face it, pro football is awesome, despite the fact it's pretty much run by a bunch of egotistical morons who seem to have a vague understanding that they're running an entertainment industry. Football's driven and funded by the scores of people willing to shell out thousands of dollars on tickets, merchandise, and millions more tuning in to watch programming that lures advertising. And alas, this big jolly ball of merchandising sunshine should expect in return to see some of the world's greatest athletes compete against one another for glory, adoration, and a shit ton of money. But pro football constantly wants to remind you to pump the brakes on the fucking fun for a minute. It's not nearly enough to run one of the largest sporting organizations in the world. They also need to run their own spin-off of Law and fucking Order. It's not nearly enough that these young men excel at many different levels of the sport just to be considered to make it to the top. It's not enough that these young men must keep their coaches and executives of their respective teams happy. It's not enough that they must maintain a level of celebrity if forced upon them, all while putting their health and well-being at risk. Fuck no, we gotta start treating these guys like children to boot, and force them to live a lifestyle that we seem suitable. I mean, look at all the shit you can be suspended for. Now granted, some of this is some heavy shit, but there's only one foolproof way to get your ass suspended. Of all of these awful and terrible things that you could perpetrate, the obvious, most hurtful, most damaging, and most unforgivable sin of them all is smoking weed. And looking at this list, it's pretty obvious why. I mean, I would definitely want to see one of my guys get a harsher punishment for smoking a joint than I would say if he murdered somebody, am I right? And I've seen all these propaganda films from the 30s. My God, I don't want to see some pothead within 3 miles of my stadium. I mean, let's fill the stands with drunks instead. Drunks are way fucking better than potheads. Always so level-headed, them drunks. And that's why I'm thinking it's the drunks that came up with the logic for these idiotic things that we suspend people for. I mean, the fact that weed is as criminal to the professional football world as using steroids. If someone could explain that tidbit to me, I would appreciate it, because I'm still waiting to understand it. I mean, come on. Any PED abuse is cheating at the sport. Fucking cheating. So, we are going to impart the same punishment to a guy who smoked a joint to a guy who literally risks his health to cheat at the sport? What kind of message is that? I mean, are we praising the pot growers of the world for creating a strain of weed that creates a better football player? I mean, you can ask a guy and be like, hey, what are you smoking, man? Oh, about 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. Like, oh, can I have a hit of that? No, fuck that. That doesn't happen. Now, don't get me wrong. As stupid as it is to hand out heavy suspensions to a guy that might get a little stoned on occasion, it's actually a pretty stupid thing to find yourself suspended for. I mean, I don't care how much you like to smoke weed. The rules have been steadfast. Like I said, this is obviously the number one way to find yourself ineligible to play. And you know they're testing for it. So I'll never understand how a guy can't refrain from weed long enough to enjoy a short, lucrative career, and then retire and have enough money to buy weed by the dump truck load. So, if you were suspended for weed, you might actually be just as stupid as the guys who made up the weed rules. The only advantage to these harsh penalties for smoking weed is the stupid excuses we get to hear when a player gets caught. Like, oh yeah, I was doing some charity work in Jamaica in the off-season, and my twin brother smoked a blunt, and we share the same DNA, and that's why I tested positive. Oh yeah? How stupid do you think we are? Well, we did create the policy for weed, so I guess we are pretty fucking stupid, I guess. And then after handing the punishment out to this guy for weed, they decide to give him plenty of unsupervised time to go out and smoke more weed so he can come back and get more suspended. So, let's review. It's apparently okay to beat your girlfriend, or even to be involved in a murder, as long as you were only drunk when you did it. However, smoking weed is every bit as bad as cheating, and you should have your name forever shamed in the annals of football history. Got it? Good. Let's move on. So now, if you find yourself suspended, you must have done something terrible, like getting stoned and playing Madden, right? Well, we aren't completely screwed yet, right? We can appeal the ruling. Hooray! We can finally tell our side of the story, and the football leaders will certainly realize that they are being unreasonable. So at this point, we can walk into the office and say, "Hello, Mr. Commissioner, I'm here to tell you what a mistake you have made by giving me such a harsh punishment." And the commissioner will turn around and say, "You make some very valid points. So valid in this case that we are going to take our time to review your case." And here is where the entire process pisses me off more than anything. At this point, I would seriously like to know what the fuck actually happens here. I mean, seriously, this is how the process should actually go. I have great remorse that my brother smoked that joint, and I had a stern talking with him, and you should never have this issue going forward. And the commissioner should just turn around and say, "Listen here, you lying sack of shit. We know you smoked weed, you failed our drug test, and you are still suspended." How fucking hard is that? Instead, the process usually goes something more like, "I was actually saving children from this burning weed factory, and that's why I failed my test." And then they turn around and say, "Let's review your statement in a timely manner." Then apparently, the commissioner sends this statement to the New Horizons spacecraft near Pluto via an outdated dial-up modem and waits 8 months as the signal is shot through space with the apparent hope that some brilliant alien race will come down to Earth and figure this shit out for them. I mean, seriously, how fucking hard can this step be? I mean, I guess if you're banging a supermodel, you might try and waste the time of the highest court in the country to make this step even harder. But since most of the league only bangs girls on Instagram or Tinder, these decisions will sit on the table and wait until the last possible fucking minute, usually in the middle of a training camp. Because a guy who clears over $40 million a year for being an asshole also needs a fucking summer vacation just to justify his salary. So fuck off, we don't need to figure this shit out until the last possible minute, right? So instead of letting the player, and the people who might need to know if they need to find a replacement player, and know what the fuck is going on, are all left in the dark, therefore making it extra difficult for front offices to know what they need to do in crucial personnel situations, therefore watering down and hurting their team. Therefore, making the sport less entertaining for fans, and therefore shitting on your main revenue builder in the first place. So now, we all get punished for this failed drug test, right? So football leaders, let me make this appeal to you. Your ass is not a good place to store your head. Sincerely, the BrownsMemes guy.